They're the secrets of ancient Egypt, which for thousands of years lay submerged beneath the Mediterranean. The treasures belong to two sunken cities which were thought to be the stuff of myth.
A city forgotten for over 1,000 years, erased from maps and hidden beneath 30 feet of Mediterranean water. Heracleion, an ancient Egyptian port once filled with massive statues, temples, and hundreds of ships, now emerged from the depths to reveal secrets frozen in time. New discoveries from this sunken city are challenging old assumptions about Egypt, Africa, and the ancient world.
A team of underwater archaeologists led by Frank Gaudio rediscovered the city 30 feet below. Only today, are we getting the first look at what they've actually found.
This is the story of Heracleion and the mysteries it is finally revealing. The lost city revealed. Right now, under 30 feet of water in Abu Qir Bay, a camera is rolling over ruins that were once thought lost forever. Heracleion, once Egypt's busiest and most important port for over a millennium, lay hidden beneath the sea, swallowed so completely that the world simply forgot it existed. It wasn't a small shipwreck or scattered artifact field, it was the remnants of an entire city, spread across several square kilometers of seabed. Stone blocks, toppled statues, some towering over 16 feet tall, and the largest ancient ship graveyard ever found are all buried here, preserved beneath layers of sediment for over 1,000 years. The discovery itself came unexpectedly in 2000, when a French survey team led by Frank Gaudio used sonar and magnetometer equipment to scan the bay. Instead of the expected debris or isolated ruins, their instruments revealed extensive stone structures beneath the mud, a vast urban landscape that did not appear on any existing maps. For centuries, historians dismissed Heracleion as myth, a city mentioned in ancient texts but assumed to be a legend. Now, this silent metropolis was returning to the light, slowly revealing its secrets. The initial reaction from the archaeological team was cautious disbelief. The extent of the site was hard to comprehend without seeing it firsthand. When divers descended to the seabed, their lights illuminated an astonishing array of collapsed temples, stone blocks, and statues lying exactly where they fell centuries ago. The underwater cityscape stretched as far as their lights could reach, confirming the existence of an ancient urban sprawl long believed lost beneath the waves. This discovery marked the beginning of one of the most important underwater archaeological projects ever undertaken. Over the following 2 decades, the team mapped approximately 30 to 40% of the site, uncovering a sprawling city comparable in size to the core of a modern urban center. Every dive added new fragments of a story that had been hidden for centuries, in the form of temples, administrative buildings, residential quarters, docks, and warehouses, all submerged beneath the Mediterranean. What makes this find particularly extraordinary is not only its scale, but its preservation. Mud and silt locked the ruins in place, protecting statues and artifacts from centuries of decay. Statues of Egyptian gods and rulers, some over 16 feet tall, lay undisturbed. Jewelry, coins, and everyday items bore silent witness to life in a thriving port. Anchors and hulls of ships, some over 2,000 years old, rested quietly on the seabed, a testament to the once bustling maritime activity that dominated the region. This sunken city was not just important for Egypt itself. It was once the commercial gateway to the ancient Mediterranean world. Ships from Greece, Phoenicia, Carthage, and countless other civilizations passed through Heracleion's harbor daily. Here, merchants paid taxes on imported goods, naval fleets were stationed, and temples dedicated to major Egyptian deities stood watch. It was a city alive with cultural, political, and economic exchange. Yet, for over 1,000 years, the city remained hidden, swallowed by the sea and forgotten even by historians. It is easy to confuse ruins with a completely vanished city, but Heracleion went beyond this. It disappeared so thoroughly that it became a myth. The recent footage capturing this lost civilization represents a profound moment of rediscovery, demanding a reevaluation of what we know about ancient urban life beneath the waves. The underwater cameras retracing the city's streets and structures today are stepping into a world frozen in time, but waiting to tell its story. Though much remains to be uncovered, Heracleion is no longer just a forgotten legend. It is an extraordinary archaeological reality rewriting history. To grasp why Heracleion once held such power requires understanding the city's unique role as the beating heart of ancient Egypt's Mediterranean connections for over 1,000 years. Historical importance of Heracleion. Heracleion, originally called Thonis by the ancient Egyptians, wasn't just some city. It was the indispensable gateway into Egypt's wide Mediterranean commerce network. For almost 1,000 years, it worked as the entry point for nearly every ship that came in from the Mediterranean. Ships from Greece, Phoenicia, and Carthage, too. A merchant simply couldn't reach Egypt's markets or its many treasures without going through that port first, so Heracleion ended up as the principal commercial hub of the country, like really the main one. It functioned like a layered place at once, like a customs hall where duties on imported wares were gathered, a naval base that watched Egypt's interests offshore, and also a religious center, with sanctuaries made for the big Egyptian deities. Those overlapping roles made it matter not only economically, but for administration, for defense, and for spiritual routine too, all while keeping the movement of trade organized and controlled. Ships that docked here carried a bunch of different types of cargo grain and papyrus, then gold and ivory, plus other exotic stuff that came from pretty deep inside the African continent. The city's busy quays and markets tied Africa's inland regions to the Mediterranean world, so you could say Heracleion became a kind of conduit for cultural swapping and economic prosperity. It was cosmopolitan, really. You had merchants, sailors, priests, officials, and laborers too, all coming in with diverse upbringings and different ethnicities. Heracleion's temples and the public buildings sort of showed its big importance. The archaeological finds include statues and carved reliefs with Egyptian rulers and deities, which points toward a city rooted in African cultural and religious inheritance. In other words, these artifacts are tangible proof that Heracleion was a lively hub of Egyptian tradition, not simply somewhere that looked foreign and then stopped there. Across its history, Heracleion felt like it was always in motion, a dynamic interaction, day after day. Its docks could handle ships built with different methods, which suggests a blend, Egyptian, Greek, and Phoenician maritime crafts mixed together. That mix indicates the city acted like a melting pot, where skills and knowledge, plus the goods themselves, moved freely between civilizations. Despite its significance, the city's prominence slowly declined over centuries, rather than collapsing all at once. Natural forces started to mess with its very foundations, eroding the way it could keep supporting the populations and routines that once flourished there. Over time, rising water tables, flooding, and sediment shifts made the harbor less dependable, like a gradual unraveling than a single catastrophic moment. By the 7th century, when the Arab conquest reshaped the region, Heracleion was already slipping under the waves, its relevance fading as neighboring Alexandria began to rise. The memories of the place dimmed, and they turned into something more legendary, tales that scholars argued over, unsure whether to treat them as records or just myth. Heracleion's story, it reminds us that ancient cities were delicate equilibria, natural pressures alongside human decisions. What once acted like Egypt's passage to the Mediterranean was eventually taken by the changing terrain itself, a city that coordinated the flow of goods, culture, and influence, now quietly resting beneath the sea. The reasons behind Heracleion's disappearance lie not in a sudden disaster, but in the subtle, relentless forces of nature that reshaped its very ground over generations. The gradual sinking. Heracleion's descent beneath the Mediterranean was not the result of violent destruction, but a protracted, nearly imperceptible process spanning generations. The city was built on the shifting sediments of the Nile Delta, a region known for its unstable foundations, where water and land continually interact. This relentless natural instability played a decisive role in the city's gradual submergence. Unlike the dramatic imagery of volcanic eruptions or invading armies destroying cities overnight, Heracleion's fate was shaped by slow subsidence and flooding. The ground beneath the city was constantly sinking, imperceptibly at first, causing cracks in walls and flooding that crept into buildings once thought permanently dry. These small but persistent changes eventually made daily life untenable for inhabitants. The Nile Delta itself is a dynamic landscape, shaped by river flows, sediment deposits, and rising sea levels. This fragile environment meant that even the grandest structures, such as temples and docks, were vulnerable to erosion and collapse. Heracleion's strategic harbor slowly lost depth, becoming shallower and less reliable for maritime traffic, crippling the city's economic lifeblood. As floors flooded and walls weakened, the city's infrastructure degraded. The harbor that had been the bustling economic center gradually became unusable. Shops, warehouses, and homes succumbed to water, prompting populations to move elsewhere as trade shifted to more viable ports like Alexandria. Throughout this slow decline, the city did not suddenly vanish in the eyes of its people. There was no obvious moment of disaster. A gradual transformation altered the landscape until the city was submerged almost without notice. By the time the 7th century and Arab conquests arrived, Heracleion had already become a drowned memory. This type of decay caused an erasure not only of physical presence, but also of historical record. Without visible ruins on land, scholars questioned the reality of Heracleion, relegating it to myth and legend. The collective memory faded as the last living generations passed away, and the sea held the city's secrets for over 13 centuries. Even as ships sailed over the site in later years, and fishermen unknowingly dropped nets above it, the city lay preserved beneath sediment, awaiting rediscovery. The silence of the seabed masked an urban landscape locked in time, poised to reveal insights into a lost chapter of ancient history. Understanding this natural subsidence is key to grasping how human civilizations survive or disappear in the face of environmental change. Heracleion's story is a compelling warning and lesson about the delicate interplay between nature and human settlement, a lesson buried for centuries beneath the waves. With the city resting underwater for so long, it took 2 decades of groundbreaking archaeological effort to begin truly unveiling Heracleion's forgotten past, using innovative technology to peer beneath the sea. The underwater excavations. The rediscovery of Heracleion set the stage for one of the most ambitious underwater archaeological projects in history. Beginning earnestly in 2001, Frank Gaudio and his team committed over 2 decades to mapping and excavating the site. Their work revealed a sprawling city submerged under layers of sediment, a hidden world frozen in time, demanding patience, precision, and innovative techniques to uncover its secrets. Underwater archaeology presents unique challenges that land-based digs do not face. Visibility, currents, and fragile artifacts heavily encased in mud require a delicate balance of technology and human skill. Gaudio's team utilized sonar mapping, magnetometers, and underwater imaging to scan the bay, charting vast areas of the seabed and identifying anomalies beneath the sediment that hinted at buried structures. This methodical approach allowed researchers to piece together this kind of picture of Heracleion as it once was. A very bustling port city complete with temples, administrative centers, docks, and those residential areas. The team's efforts unearthed hundreds of statues and architectural fragments, some towering over 16 feet tall, sitting exactly where time and the sea had left them. Those discoveries did not really match up with earlier understandings of lost ancient cities, which were often assumed to be little more than scattered ruins, you know. The scale of the site was honestly staggering. Covering roughly 10 square kilometers, it rivaled the size of a large modern urban center. But even with that vastness, only about 30 to 40% of the city had been excavated as of 2020, so the rest was still hidden under layers of sand and sediment. That meant every dive, every scan, really had the potential to bring back some major new revelation about ancient Egyptian daily life. The artifacts uncovered paint a vivid portrait of everyday life and religious practice. Jewelry, coins, and ceremonial objects came up alongside ordinary household things, sort of grounding the city's grandness in the realities of the people who lived there. And the anchoring stones of ships, plus hull remains, tell this story of ongoing maritime activity that linked Heracleion to a broader Mediterranean trade network. The excavation also kind of highlighted the cosmopolitan character of Heracleion. Structural remains and artifacts suggested the mingling of Egyptian, Greek, Phoenician, and other Mediterranean influences, like it was never just one story. And the shipbuilding technique found among the wrecks pretty much confirmed a blending of skills and cultures too, because vessels from diverse origins docked in this big port city, which points to a hub of exchange not only of goods, but of ideas and craftsmanship. The team's work, in a way, showed that the city was far more than a static archaeological site. It felt like a dynamic crossroads, an economic powerhouse, a religious sanctuary, and an administrative center all at once. Every statue, or even a building fragment that got unearthed, was one piece of a complex puzzle, showing how ancient civilizations lived in intricate balance with their environment and neighbors. The uncovering of Heracleion beneath the waves redefined what underwater archaeology can actually do by combining careful exploration with cutting-edge technology to reveal this hidden chapter of human history. What remains to be discovered is still there, and it should deepen our understanding of this vanished city even further. Among the many remarkable finds within Heracleion, the most astonishing has been the extraordinary fleet of ships lying quietly on the seabed, offering a tangible connection to the city's maritime heart. The ships of Heracleion. Heracleion's harbor yielded something unprecedented in underwater archaeology. A collection of 64 ancient ships of varying sizes and origins, the largest grouping ever found in a single site. These vessels, ranging from small river crafts to massive seagoing ships, tell a unique story of the port's commercial complexity and its role as the Mediterranean's maritime crossroads. In the ancient world, ships were not simple vehicles. They were masterpieces of engineering, crafted through years of skilled labor and immense resource investment. Each large trading ship embodied the combined expertise of carpenters, caulkers, and sailors, using precious timbers and rare materials, making every vessel a valuable and vital asset. Finding one such ship preserved is rare. Finding 64 is extraordinary. This variety of ships illustrates the diversity of maritime trade that flowed through Heracleion. Some vessels were unmistakably Egyptian in design, while others reflected Greek and Phoenician construction techniques. This indicates that Heracleion was a true melting pot of cultures and technologies, accommodating and facilitating the exchange of ideas as much as goods. The ships themselves acted as floating symbols of the city's extensive commercial network, connecting Egypt to vastly different regions along the Mediterranean and beyond. They carried rich cargoes including grain, gold, ivory, incense, and ebony, commodities that traveled distances stretching deep into Africa's interior, linking Heracleion to the broader African continent and its many civilizations. Each shipwreck is a frozen moment in time, offering clues about trade routes, shipbuilding traditions, and the scale of economic activity. The diversity and number of ships also speak to Heracleion's strategic importance, not merely a military outpost or fishing village, but a bustling port where merchants of multiple ethnicities and backgrounds met regularly to trade and conduct business. Preserving these ships beneath the sea brought unique challenges, but the mud and sediment that engulfed them helped shield their wooden structures from rot and degradation. This preservation allows archaeologists to study construction methods and even cargo types in greater detail than almost anywhere else in the archaeological record. The discovery of this maritime fleet advances our understanding of ancient seafaring and commerce, showing how interconnected the Mediterranean world was. It also shines a spotlight on Heracleion's role as a commercial nervous system, key to importing and exporting goods that shaped the economies and cultures tied to the Nile and beyond. Finding this vast array of ships at one site is unparalleled, making Heracleion a crucial archaeological treasure that bridges history, commerce, and cross-cultural exchange. It reveals the power of the port city as a lively international hub that connected continents and civilizations for centuries. Beyond the vessels and trade, Heracleion's unique location at the mouth of the Nile also framed its identity as a crucial link between Africa's interior and the wider Mediterranean world, a connection not often fully acknowledged in conventional histories. Heracleion's African connections. Heracleion's importance extends far beyond its maritime activities. It stood as a critical link between Egypt and the interior of the African continent. Situated at the mouth of the Nile where it meets the Mediterranean, The city was the gateway for goods and cultures flowing up and down the Nile River system, which served as Africa's economic and cultural spine. This meant Heracleion was not only Egypt's port, but a crossroads for a vast network stretching deep into sub-Saharan Africa. The Nile Valley civilization, which thrived for thousands of years before Alexander the Great, connected regions such as Nubia and Kush to the Mediterranean world through Heracleion. Ships arriving at this port from the south carried precious commodities, gold, ivory, incense, and ebony, originating from far into the African interior. These goods were integral to Mediterranean economies, fueling trade and enriching cultures thousands of miles away from their points of origin. The merchants operating in Heracleion were a diverse assembly, including not only Greeks, Phoenicians, and Egyptians, but also traders from Nubian and Upper Nile cultures. This multi-ethnic mix highlights the city's role as an African city at its core, a city defined by its integration within the Nile Valley civilization and its broader continental relationships. The city was a melting pot, where cultural and economic exchanges crossed ethnic and geographic boundaries. Officials charged with collecting taxes, priests maintaining temples, and workers building ships were largely Egyptian, anchoring Heracleion in its African heritage. The statues uncovered, many over 16 feet tall, depict Egyptian gods and rulers crafted in indigenous artistic traditions rather than external imports. These artifacts underscore Heracleion's identity as a center of native African cultural and religious life, developed over millennia. This connection is essential to reshaping narratives that often isolate ancient Egypt from the rest of the African continent. Heracleion stands as physical proof that African civilizations were intricately linked long before Mediterranean influences brought Greek and later Roman cultural overlays. It reveals a continuity of African heritage deeply embedded in the Nile Valley. Historians and archaeologists now recognize that much of what surrounded Heracleion's flourishing was part of a vast and interconnected commercial geography. Trade routes extended thousands of miles into Africa's interior, sustaining cultural, political, and economic relationships that helped build civilizations. Heracleion's harbor was the interface where these inland riches met the Mediterranean world's demand for luxury and essential goods. The city's African character challenges long-standing, sometimes politicized, debates about the origins and identity of ancient Egyptian civilization. For centuries, Western Egyptology has minimized or obscured the African roots of Egypt's great dynasties. Discoveries at Heracleion encourage a re-evaluation of these positions by revealing tangible evidence of deep African cultural continuities. The preservation of Heracleion invites a renewed appreciation for Africa's historical centrality in global civilization. It stands as a monument to the continent's dynamic role in shaping economic and cultural exchanges across the ancient world. This perspective enriches our understanding of Heracleion, not simply as a sunken port, but as part of Africa's enduring legacy. While these connections broaden the story of Heracleion's significance, recent underwater explorations have uncovered something even more astonishing: a mysterious chamber predating much of the known city that could rewrite the timeline of its history. Newly discovered chamber. In 2024, as researchers returned to Heracleion with the latest underwater imaging technology, they encountered a discovery that challenged existing assumptions about the city's age and development. Using advanced three-dimensional scanning and refined contextual knowledge from prior excavations, the team identified a chamber hidden beneath sediment in an area previously untouched. This structure had no name or precedent in any earlier records or maps of the site. The chamber's materials and construction style suggest it predates the main Ptolemaic-era urban remains excavated over the past 2 decades. This revelation implies that Heracleion's history might extend far deeper into the past than scholars had documented, potentially tracing back to the height of pharaonic Egypt itself. Such a finding opens new questions about the origins and evolution of this vital port city. Egyptologists have long debated the origins and identity of ancient Egypt's early dynasties, especially the links between Nile Valley civilizations and wider African cultures. The discovery of a structure predating Greek influences complicates previous narratives by potentially illustrating a city that was more fully itself before Mediterranean interaction reshaped its character. This stands to influence discussions about Egypt's African roots and its place in continental history. Researchers responding to the footage described their astonishment in unusually candid terms, using words like unexpected, and noting that nothing in the existing framework accounts for this. Such language signals how drastically this chamber may alter the academic understanding of Heracleion and ancient Egyptian urban development. The excavation of this chamber is ongoing, with detailed analysis yet to verify its full extent, function, and age. Early evidence points to architectural features and artifacts not matching those from later periods, offering a unique window into Heracleion's earlier phases. What emerges from this site could illuminate aspects of ancient urbanism, trade, and culture previously hidden beneath sediment and scholarly assumptions. This discovery feeds into a larger, sometimes contentious debate about the African origins of Egyptian civilization. Western academic traditions have often resisted acknowledging genetic, linguistic, and cultural evidence linking Pharaonic Egypt to sub-Saharan Africa. If the chamber truly predates foreign influence, it may provide powerful material evidence underscoring Egypt's indigenous and African foundations. The unfolding story at Heracleion is a reminder that history is rarely fixed. It changes as new evidence comes to light and as perspectives broaden. This chamber represents not only a physical space, but a symbolic gateway to rethinking ancient narratives and regional interconnectedness. Though much remains to be uncovered, what is certain is that Heracleion still holds untold secrets. The sea may have kept this chamber hidden for centuries, but it is gradually surrendering clues that will reshape how we perceive ancient history. As these revelations continue to unfold, they push us to reconsider not just Heracleion's past, but the wider story of African civilization and the Mediterranean's intertwined heritage. What Heracleion means today, Heracleion rediscovery and ongoing excavation feel like more than just a string of archaeological milestones. It kind of shifts how we read ancient African and Mediterranean histories altogether. The city's sunken remains offer real, hands-on proof that Africa's role in global civilization is not shallow at all, but deep and tightly connected. And no, Heracleion was not some distant sideshow, cut off from everything. It reads more like a bustling node, a vibrant hub, tying together cultures from the African interior with the wider ancient world, pushing back against stories that have leaned too long on marginalizing this whole picture. The latest findings, they also show how intricate African urban centers were before Greek and Roman dominance took hold. Heracleion's past seems to stretch back further than anyone wanted to admit, and that underlines how African civilizations built sophisticated political, religious, and commercial systems well before outside influence. Even that ancient chamber that appears beneath the seabed could adjust timelines and point toward indigenous inventions in urban planning, civic management, and diplomatic practice. Heracleion also brings home an awkward but important idea. History can be bent, revised, almost reassembled, when new viewpoints plus modern technologies surface old chapters we forgot. For centuries, this place was treated like myth, its existence questioned or quietly dismissed by some scholars. But the seabed stayed there, steady and patient, keeping relics and structures intact until now. And it confronts us with evidence that asks us to reconsider assumptions, so we can embrace a more complete narrative of human accomplishment, one that actually matches what the material record is telling us. The city's multicultural and multiracial makeup kind of speaks strongly to how civilizations across Africa and around the Mediterranean have been interconnected for a long while. Heracleion's merchants, workers, and officials came from a wide range of ethnicities, and its crafts and religious artifacts really show a blending of traditions. It pushes back on those reductive ways of framing ancient history into tidy cultural or racial boxes, and instead, it sort of celebrates shared human experiences in a more lived-in kind of way. Heracleion's story also brings out that environmental factors have shaped the destinies of civilizations, and it reminds us how vulnerable even the biggest cities can be when nature decides to shift. Its slow sinking beneath the waves was not some sudden disaster, more like a gradual process that slowly erased Heracleion from the map and from memory too. That really points to the delicate balance societies need to keep with their surroundings, and honestly, this is still relevant today, not just as a lesson on paper. The excavation work going on right now makes it clear we've only started to scratch the surface of Heracleion's secrets. Since roughly 60 to 70% of the site is still unexamined, the whole narrative is still not complete. New finds later on could adjust the city's place in history, its age, and its cultural importance in ways we can barely picture. And in turn, they should enrich how we understand ancient African civilizations and their lasting legacy. Heracleion's rediscovery is kind of a strong nudge that the past isn't really still, and it's also not fully, known. Every artifact, the statues, and even those sunken shipwrecks feel like fragments, part of a big historical puzzle that still needs to be fitted in place and made sense of. The city invites us to rethink history, not like it is a set catalog of stories, but more like a living conversation, shaped by what we find, how we interpret it, and the questions we dare to ask. And honestly, this place under the sea brings a real sense of pride too. For descendants of those ancient civilizations, it can become a source of identity because it connects today's communities back to their ancestors' achievements. With preservation and careful study, new learning pathways open up, helping correct misunderstandings while also highlighting the richness of African cultural heritage on a global stage. Heracleion's sunken city challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient Africa and the Mediterranean world. Its rediscovery reveals a story of culture, commerce, and connection long forgotten beneath the waves. If this journey into the lost city sparked your curiosity, like the video and subscribe for more untold histories uncovered.